Hello horror fans, and welcome to another edition of Silver Screens. Today we are talking about MTV Scream episode 7. We only have 3 episodes left before the season is done.
Do we know what this episode was called?
Offhand, I don't know. Who cares?
I never had any idea.
It was the Saw episode.
This
was Saw.
It stopped being Scream and started being Saw. We're sitting here going, I want to play a game with you.
The opening shot was very reminiscent of a Saw movie, and the trap at the end was very reminiscent of a Saw movie. It was essentially bookended with traps, which, I mean, Ghostface has never played fair, but the way he normally traps people is always just because, oh, I'm going to go ahead and say, spoiler alert for Screams 1 through 4, in case this is your first episode of Silver Screams.
Because we've never spoiled those in anything.
But the way that Ghostface doesn't play fair is because he always outnumbers everybody. And in the one case that he didn't outnumber our protagonist, he had a movie set at his disposal.
It honestly makes me wonder if we're not playing with a single Ghostface again. Because they're falling back on traps and because of the way they've been doing things, I would honestly not be surprised if it was only one person behind the mask instead of 2.
And we did get our homage with that shot of Will and Jake in mask and hood attire, so we would still get our reference. And there's the fact that there's the 2 of them working together for the blackmailing scheme. That is where we could have our dual Ghostface homage or component of the show. I still don't want to rule out that it's 2 people because it's always 2 people.
It's a tradition.
It is very much a tradition, and the one entry in the franchise that didn't do that is widely disowned.
It's disowned.
It's the redheaded stepchild of the franchise.
But I mean, we're disowning tradition from the get-go for having it be a series.
That's very true.
From getting away from Woodsboro? Woodbury?
Yeah, it's Woodsboro. Woodbury is something very different. Woodbury is Walking Dead.
I have crossed the streams pretty hard.
That's okay.
Getting away from Woodsboro, getting away from Sydney, we've basically taken this and made a nice, tidy little AU.
And so anything can happen. And we hit a lot of similar beats, and we have a lot of similar character types. But yeah, nothing is locked in, and they're definitely trying to make it their own with the different aspects, the whole mystery aspect of it, the whole
20 years,
the whole blackmailing thing. Like,
20 years?
Yeah, it was 1995, 94. I think it was 94.
God,
anyway,
the 90s were 20 years ago.
I know, we're so old. We are so old. Anyway, we're getting there. Anyway, so this episode basically is the hunt for Will. Emma gets a call from Ghostface, which we actually get confirmation that he has that universal voice changer.
Or that he's a mimic. There are some people that are very, very good mimics.
You know what? Fair enough. Yeah, he could be just a very good voice actor. Which, actually, if you guys go over to AfterBuzz TV and see my voice-up interview with James Arnold Taylor, you'll see one of those vocal chameleons. I almost called him a comedian. He's very funny, though.
I was also thinking of Miles Luna and Shannon McCormick.
Yeah, no, they're both very, very good. We just came from RTX, if you can't tell.
Well, we just matched today.
We do.
We didn't plan this.
No, we didn't. I just needed a tank top. Anyway, it's very hot in California. Not nearly as hot as it is in Texas.
It's 102 degrees in Austin. It's like,
was
what, 85 here? It's not a big deal.
It made me miss California so much.
Not movie.
Back to the not movie. So
back to the movie.
So
nope,
we have the hunt for Will, and surprisingly, Jake and Brooke are accompanying Emma and Noah in this search. Which we actually have a moment where Brooke and Jake confront Brooke's father, you know, because he supposedly, you know, did away with a body and isn't owning up to it, and now Will has disappeared after confronting him.
And all he's saying is just stuff like, you know, it's not what it looks like, you need to trust me on this, not actually telling her where her mom is, wouldn't give her a name of a rehab.
He said just rehab in Arizona. Arizona is a pretty big state.
Or desert.
Yeah, a lot of wide open spaces, a lot of good places to hide a body.
He is being extremely shifty when, if he wanted suspicion off of him, he could clear it up very quickly.
Now, because he's not owning up to it, I do want to say that there's more to it than we initially think. I do think, like, it's entirely possible that he killed his wife on accident or on purpose and just hid the body and has been playing the blackmail for it. It's also entirely...
this big ridiculous theory that, like, the entire town's in on this.
It could be.
Like, one person committed one murder and someone else went, this works perfectly into something else I was planning. I'm going to take credit for that noise, and now I'm going to do this. And that it's just been this... What's the machine where you hit one thing and, like, 80,000 things happen in a row?
Oh, like
Rube Goldberg.
That's the one.
It's a Rube Goldberg machine of murder. Rube Goldberg Murder Machine. That's the name of my REO Speedwagon cover band.
Again, kind of what Jigsaw was all about in the Saw franchise.
But I mean, like, with multiple people.
Well, like the Saw franchise. There were multiple Jigsaws. Spoiler alert, I guess. There are 8 movies. Are you really going to watch them all?
Decade.
Are you really going to watch them all also if you haven't seen them already?
The statute of limitations is over on that.
I'll be honest, I've only seen 1 and 2. I didn't need anything else after
And
that.
I just haven't.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
Rube Goldberg Murder Machine.
But anyway, back to this episode. Here's my question is whether or not you think he did it, because I'm inclined to believe that this is something bigger than just a politician doing away with his wife.
Oh, I like the idea that he hit a pedestrian.
Yeah, that's entirely
and is just
possible
covering it up. That's also, my going theory.
It's
a little pedestrian, but in more than one way.
How dare you? Get out. Anyway, I like that theory, but I also wouldn't put it past this show to have him covering for someone else. If his wife is in rehab, what if she hit a pedestrian? And
also
he is hiding the body to cover for her and immediately put her in rehab so that this could stay quiet.
I'm fairly certain Brooke did not hit the pedestrian.
No, not Brooke. His wife.
I know. I'm just saying, if we're talking about people he's covering for, she's on the short list, and I think we can take her off of it. But yeah, that's also true. But I think we're both kind of in on the fact that he's probably not Ghostface.
Well,
this is probably something a little closer to home.
I'm wondering if this ties into Ghostface in any way, shape, or form. Because why
he hit Brandon James.
That was what we were talking about last time. That would be so funny.
You did last summer.
And pretty soon, Ghostface starts having a hook for a hand, and
a hook on one hand and a knife in the other, dual wielding.
Yeah, that's dangerous. You should get yourself a knife spear.
A knife stick.
A knife stick.
A knife stick.
AKA a spear.
They do call those spears.
I really did like knife stick. Knife wrench, knife stick. It was great. But yeah, with this guy, it seems real. I mean, if this isn't tied to the killer in some way, or in some way tied back to kind of our main characters, then this just seems like a big red herring, and it would be really weird for something seemingly so big to be a big red herring. And again,
just because it's a red herring for what's going on in the current murder-filled situation doesn't mean it's not still a big thing, because this was also going on before the murders, and the murders all seem to be centered on Emma.
I wonder if whoever that was, whoever's body that was, what if that was the catalyst for all this? Maybe somebody died and the current now killer taking on the moniker of Brandon James, aka Ghostface, is like, that is what set this person off. I don't know for sure, but if we are going with the I know what you did last summer,
we're missing a link in the logic chain for that one.
I'm well aware. I mean, I'm grasping at straws because I want this to be important. I don't want it just to be a big red herring.
To the narrative doesn't mean it's not important to the characters that it affects.
That's true.
I would say that honestly, we could probably have a whole series around the blackmail and what's in the body bag and all that fun stuff. But it's just, it's not part of this chain of murders, but it's enough to make us wonder, and it's definitely going to impact Well, I am losing my words. It's a big deal
it
for
impacts
people
our characters and their development.
But it's not as big in the narrative that we're expecting, because we are primed to think of Ghostface as the main narrative.
Yeah.
Whereas what's going on in the mayor's life, the stuff that's happening with Ghostface sucks because he's running the town, but getting blackmailed and dealing with this body bag and his daughter is his main narrative.
Well,
we just don't care about him because the lens of the show puts him as something of an ancillary character.
Yeah, and it could be that all of this is less important in terms of who the quote-unquote killer is, and more in terms of development for Brooke, having to come to terms with the fact that her father might be a killer, the fact that her father is lying to her, the fact that she doesn't know where her mother is. This is all development that's pushing her to being a better person. So I understand it being important in that regard, but the blackmail, the cover-up for the body that the mayor is hiding, if these aren't all tied together, if it's not connected, to me, and again, this is entirely my opinion, I could be very wrong on this, but to me it feels like a distraction. Because any good mystery, I mean, yeah, you can have subplots, but like when you're given different components, you should, by the end of it, be able to put them all together and go, you should be able to see the puzzle piece. So I'm wanting to connect these different pieces, and maybe they don't connect. Maybe they don't.
I'm not saying that it won't factor in at all, because definitely you had the two guys who were angry at each other. You had the multiple, I am really losing words.
Suspects.
Really badly
like multiple
tonight.
suspects?
You had multiple people in this blackmail ring, and what's to say that the killer isn't one of the... Okay, the killer isn't the last guy we have left. Let's be real here. And that getting hacked off with the people in the blackmail ring wasn't part of his motivation for taking them out as well.
That could be it
I'm not
too.
saying that it's completely disconnected, but I'm saying that it is probably not the main motivation. It may put in other emotion and other motivations, but it's not the main reason.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think the mayor is the killer, and I just think the mayor is definitely just a guy who's involved with some shady stuff and is just trying to cover it up.
In 3 episodes, we're going to be sitting here with hard alcohol going, oh my god, I can't believe the mayor was the killer.
Glug, glug.
Just line up the shots on the table down here.
But no, the only thing the only thing that I could potentially be frustrated by is that all of that was a distraction and didn't matter. I don't want to feel like at the end of Clue when they're bringing up, well, what about
communism was a red herring.
Communism was a red herring. This has nothing to do with my missing physicist husband or Colonel Mustard's secret work on the new fusion bomb. I don't want that to be like, oh yeah, no, that was just a red herring. It was really Mrs. Peacock all along. I don't want that, because that feels like a cop-out to me. I want all of this to fit together in a way that makes me go, whoa, that was amazing. And again, this is all stuff that is building up, and it's stuff that we won't be able, and it's stuff that we won't be able to know until we get to the end of the season, possibly even the series, because it has been renewed for season 2. If
they don't wrap this up by the end of the season, I'm going to be mad at them, because if the season hadn't been renewed, we never would have had the end of the mystery.
You're going to be mad at them. I think it's going to be the same cast of characters and everything. You're going to be so mad. I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, so let's...
Might not be the same mystery.
I'm hoping that we get more answers, because I don't like being strung along when it comes to mysteries.
We've had 4 movies with the same people.
Yeah.
For the most part, the same core.
So I would very much like this component to be wrapped up and then somebody else taking on the mantle of Ghostface.
Oh yeah.
That being said, you can only do that for so long if, like, we're talking about season chunks before it gets repetitive. So I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, guys, I watched Lost for 7 years. I can't go through that again. I just can't. Please don't make me go through that again.
I don't think MTV can keep viewership for that long.
Point being is I don't like being strung along anymore, and I've been spoiled by Netflix. I like being able to just have that instant gratification. Anywho, that's neither here nor there. Now that we've talked about Brooke, let's talk about this hunt in the bowling alley. Because I guess...
Add one more to this It's a Five Nights at Freddy's thing. This is where kids go to have fun. Now it's murder.
Isn't it so weird that such an affluent town has so many weird abandoned areas? Like, it had weird
there's no longer any middle class people to go to them, and rich people don't go to them.
I guess so. But they had, the killer's lair.
Gentrification, it's a problem.
They had the killer's lair.
They have this bowling alley. They've got this farmhouse in the middle of
Yeah, that's actually Will's house. Will lives on a farm, or lived on a farm. Lived on a farm, but it is the shadiest most rundown looking farm. But at least they explain that by saying Will doesn't have money. His family doesn't have money. They're farmers who aren't very well off. So, yeah, no, at least that explains why the barn looks so shady. But like,
an abandoned bowling alley.
Now,
it's a very specific location for a very upper class town.
Exactly. And granted, not that nice neighborhoods can't have bad neighborhoods too, because they certainly can. But it's like everywhere that was connected with Brandon James is now abandoned. And that may be because the town very much wants to disown what happened there. Although, it also could be that the bowling alley was just currently under construction.
No, that looked super abandoned.
Yeah, it did.
The bowling alley is also cursed.
But like, I do like that everybody knew, oh yeah, the bowling alley. Like, I don't know about you, I didn't hang out at abandoned structures in my town. But anyway, that's just me.
Are there abandoned structures in your town?
There are some, like I live in a desert town, or I used to live in it. I grew up in a desert town, and there are like houses.
It's a desert town.
There are houses on the very outskirts of town that like aren't inhabited, and people basically use them as like paintball gun arenas. There are also lots of abandoned mines, so be careful if you're motorcycling in the area, because more than once incidents have happened. So watch where you're riding.
I'm just imagining the goofy yell while someone goes down.
People actually have died that way.
Oh, I'm sure.
Don't be insensitive, but
I'm absolutely sure.
Anyway,
I'm also
my Night Vale town doesn't really matter in the context of this conversation. Although when I was my very first job, I was talking with one of my coworkers who was talking about how they went to one of these houses on the outskirts of town that was supposedly haunted. So I was like, you are an idiot. You are an idiot, and you deserve whatever happened to you. Anyway.
I've lived in a haunted house. It's not as bad as people make it out.
Yeah, but you didn't live on a haunted... You didn't actively go with a bunch of other teenagers to a haunted house on the outskirts of town.
Oh, fuck no. It was a military base. Every square inch was used for something.
Exactly. Exactly. You weren't asking for trouble horror movie style. That's what I'm saying.
Of course not.
Anyway, back to the episode. Our lives, don't really matter right now. Let's talk about the episode. So, this bowling alley, basically, when they find Will all strung up, and up until this point, you're kind of going back and forth on whether or not Will is in on it. If, like, they're not doing what they did in Scream 1 and pretending like the boyfriend is hurt, just so that he can pull the rug out from under them.
I will say the injury that he got at the end of last episode and just his reaction to it is a very genuine reaction.
That, well, we know that now. We definitely
But
know
even
that
then
now.
It was just like, oh, this is going to bode poorly for him.
Well, even if it had been rehearsed, being stabbed is a scary thing, and guess what? It hurts.
He wouldn't have been performing for anyone, though, because the other girl was knocked out.
No, but she was still conscious. It wasn't until the very, very end where she fully lost consciousness. So it could have been a show in, although we know now that it wasn't. Although I'm not entirely convinced that Piper and whoever was dressed as Ghostface aren't in on it together. That's just a tentative theory for right now, because I'm throwing everything at the wall just to see what sticks.
You should see the wall. It's amazing.
I don't want it to be Gale Weathers, and again, but anyway, so
It'd
at
be
this
an
point,
interesting twist if it were. Make your own stories.
Exactly. But anyway, so at this point, you don't know whether or not he's in on it or not, especially with the fact that Emma gets separated again to hear this really archaic thing. It's a square.
It's a cassette tape.
What are those? Yeah. No, we were laughing because I don't know how many people who watch MTV know what those are. I feel like
They also think 700 Hits is viral. This is a show that doesn't understand any form of technology.
But it did look, I was surprised it even played because it looked like it had been, it looked like the tape could have disintegrated in the amount of time that it had been there. Because we find out that Brandon James had worked there and that there was a tape, presumably recorded by Emma's father, saying things like, I can't believe she slept with that monster, implying that Daisy and Brandon had not only been friends, as we found out in the previous episode,
but had benefits.
But actually had been intimate at one point. Which is kind of interesting, given that the start of this episode, Emma had referred to Kieran as just a friend.
When they definitely had some fun last time.
So yeah, I thought that was an interesting parallel too. And you know, they're making out at the beginning of this episode too. So I thought that was an interesting parallel. So again, putting more suspicion on Emma's father, because it sounds like he's the one out of the two of them that was really off the rails.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even Brandon James, or Ghostface, even his message to Emma at the end was like,
have some self-respect, because they found Will and they carted him off to the hospital and he lived, and he called her and they talked him. I thought this was really smart of her. What did we have on our second date? What did we eat?
Because they had literally just been talking about it, because she wanted to verify that it wasn't just Ghostface with the voice changer again.
And it was Indian food. All sorts of fun stuff, and it's like, and then we watched Maze Runner. Oh, okay, yeah, definitely that. So again, I love it when they do that in movies, and it's not just what's the password, but it's what's something you would know that someone else with casual knowledge of our relationship.
And I just love, you could tell he's smiling on the other end. You know, I can't recall. But this is going to be a date to remember.
But when she's talking to actual Will, they're chatting, they're having a good time, and they essentially make a movie date.
Yeah, and
because he's stuck in bed rest because he's been stabbed.
And he mentions that
so was the other guy also stabbed.
Yeah, we hadn't talked about that, but Jake gets separated from the group right before Ghostface appears, and gets stabbed in the chest, is also carted away to the hospital, and so if he is involved, because Will has now definitely been erased from our suspect list, but if Jake is still involved, as Noah pointed out, this whole setup could have been a big distraction to try to throw the scent off of him.
Oh yeah.
To make the audience think, okay, now it can't possibly be him.
He survived getting a knife in the ribs.
He did.
It's kind of a big thing.
Come on, Brooke. You leave that to the medical professionals. Oh, yeah. You do not like.
He's going, pull it out, and she's like braces and full.
I love that she like put her foot on his chest and just yanked it out. Yeah, it's like, you are not medical professionals. That is not how that works. It's actually probably better if you leave it in.
TV.
I'm not going to pretend like I'm a medical professional, but I'm going to assume that it's actually better to keep that in until you can get him medical attention.
Well, that is what you do if there's something in the eye.
Ugh.
You wrap the eye with the thing still in it.
Oh, God. Ugh, I did not need to know that.
I remember some things from first aid training in junior high.
I just, you know, because if you pull it out, then, you know, anyway. Like I said, I'm not a medical professional.
You wrap both eyes because the eyes move together usually. Oh, God. And so you don't want to cause more trauma, so you just wrap them both so they're not tempted to look and make things worse.
So gross.
This is your medical training on this episode of Scream.
But here, now again, the big question is, because he was still playing innocent in this whole blackmail dealy, Noah is wise enough to sort of be able to see through it. Everybody else is still kind of
believing him innocent.
Yeah, and so, and again, this whole incident has brought him and Brooke closer together as well. So, which, again, and he actually did bring with him a cornucopia of knives. So, like, he brought a bunch of knives with him.
I'm imagining the Thanksgiving horn with a bunch of knives.
Exactly.
A cornucopia of knives.
It sounds like something that would be in the Hunger Games.
Well, it kind of is.
Yeah, exactly. In the cornucopia, you have your pile of knives, and yeah.
And there are a few other things, because why not?
But yeah, definitely the knife pile. Go for the knife pile. But anyway, so again, he is not exempt yet. And again, I can't tell whether or not him being all creepy and weird and murdery and knife happy is all a red herring, or if it's like by the end of the season we're like, how did we not know for sure because he's been crazy this entire season?
But Billy Loomis was a little more subtle crazy the first time you watch it.
Yeah, no.
He is not.
Billy Loomis spoke in metaphors and whispers, and the only time he straight up like threatened somebody was when essentially Stu accused him of being the killer. And even, which, by the way, that is still like my favorite shot in the movie, is just when Randy is in between Stu and Billy. And like that is just the worst. When you watch it for the first time, you don't think anything of it. You just think Billy's being creepy and that Stu thinks it's funny. But you watch it again and you're like, that is literally the worst place in the world to be. And wow, that is amazing. So again, a very, very, very clever film upon a second watch. Anyway, again, neither here nor there. But Jake could very well still be our killer. We don't know.
Will's not.
Will's definitely not. So
this is where it gets real.
It really did. So yeah, let's talk about this awful. Well, there is one other thing to talk about
on their date.
There is one other thing to talk about was the fact that Emma and the sheriff are actually sitting, or not Emma and the sheriff, but Daisy and the sheriff are actually sitting down and having a dinner. And that the sheriff from the previous 2 episodes has been taken off the case. The detective that was interrogating Audrey.
To arrest a minor with no adult, problems.
Yeah, exactly. So she has been taken off the case, but I don't think she's gone yet necessarily. I could be completely wrong. We might never see her again.
She could be a one-off. They could be saving her for season 2.
I think it would be interesting if she stuck around and was going off, you know, not off the record because that's a journalism term, but was basically doing this investigation on her own and was off the clock, I guess, and was defying orders to try to find out who this killer was, because she also seems like a very stubborn and proud person. Especially one who had been jilted by the current sheriff. She's not necessarily one to let that slide because he was very much a part of why she was probably taken off the case. So we don't know if we'll see her again, but I would love the idea if she stuck around and tried to play, you know, the rogue detective.
Oh, yeah.
So that would be interesting. I don't know for sure if we'll see her again or not. I would like to. I thought she added something kind of fun and interesting. She's definitely a jerk, but like I kind of like
flat.
Yeah, it was kind of one note,
the same way that you're supposed to hate. Shit.
It's late. But again,
it's late. I'm tired, and there's a fly.
I want her to come back. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's getting drunk.
Oh. I want her to come back because much like the other things that we've been talking about tonight, I want her to be important. I don't want a bunch of one-off things. I want a really intricate, tightly woven together story.
I just want an answer.
Yeah, that too. That would be nice. I want a story where at the end of it I can step back and go, that was important, that was important. Everything that was presented to me was important. And that's one of the good things about these movies too, is that you can watch them again and again and go, not a second of this was wasted. All of this was really important and really well done, and I want that from this series too. And so far, it's been giving it to me, and I'm waiting for the payoff. So, do you wanna talk about this last scene?
She gets a call from Will. It's like, I'm looking for you. Where are you? Oh, come find me. Considering that was what the killer told her,
because it was a game of hide and seek.
Hide and seek. You have to find him. She was like, no. Where are you? Where are you? What did we eat on our second date? Oh, it slipped my mind, but
you know, I can't recall.
But
even though we were just talking about
date to remember, and she's just like, oh, son of a bitch. And he drops the act, and yeah, it's the killer voice, and he essentially chastises her for not having any self-respect and for forgiving him for lying to her. And something about how Daisy forgave people? Or?
Yeah, just like Daisy. And I don't know if that was in reference to Daisy being accepting of Brandon James or Daisy forgiving Emma's father for probably mistreating him again and or setting him off and or doing a number of things, because there was some talk about why Emma's father and her mother are no longer together, and Emma's mother basically summed it up by saying some people just can't let it go. Can't let it go being what happened in the past.
Yeah.
Because Emma's mother has learned to deal with it. And he
in so
did.
Much as she deals with it.
Exactly. Deals with it by avoiding it and not talking about it. But her father was not able to do that, and his solution supposedly was running off. Again, supposedly.
And then changing his name, coming back with a mask, and yeah. Who knows?
Again, he could be dead now for all we know. He could be a victim. He could end up in the final reel.
At the very end of episode 9.
Exactly. But yeah, anyway, so she runs to try to save Will.
Because he tells her,
it's what you're going to do.
What you're going to do to him, yeah. She said, don't do anything to him. Well, that's what you're going to do to him. And she sees him, and he's tied to a chair, with his mouth taped, with this giant chainsaw-looking farm implement behind him. It's like, well, this is ugly. So she starts running for him, and she trips on a string. And the string is connected to a knob, and it pulls the knob down, and that's some amazing blood spatter there. All over the place, all over her, all over the stuff next to her. So she just witnessed him die horribly. And we get a nice good shot of his face as the thing comes down before it hits, and you just kind of see him going, this is not going to end well.
Yeah, no, he knows it. He knows that that's the end.
It's super freaking violent.
Yeah, no, and again, this was a guy who, in retrospect, was just trying to do the right thing. He was trying to make up for all the wrong that he had done.
And this is Scream forcing her to, this is Ghostface forcing her to kill someone that, you know, did not deserve it. And this is the guy who straight up said at the end of last episode, I don't want to die for doing the right thing. So, you're in a horror movie. That's how you get killed.
Damn.
Yeah.
So, I can honestly say that I was never expecting anything that graphic.
Oh, it's very soft.
Because, yeah, when I think of Scream, obviously there's a knife-wielding crazy guy, but I've never seen anything like that, where like a chainsaw-type device was involved.
To the point where they have to imply the death instead of show it.
Yeah, no, the most graphic Scream ever got was one time a guy got into a car accident and a pole went through his head. That was Scream 2. And then in Scream 4, you actually see a little intestines from a dead person.
Yeah.
And that's the most graphic it ever got. Scream, surprisingly, is not really a graphic series, and that's one of the reasons why I actually really like it, because
Scream
it's effective.
It's character deaths. It's all in the setup. It's all in the staging. It's all in the execution. It's all in all of that. It doesn't have to be horribly bloody and messy and fuck up your system.
No, it was all
for it to be
substance, not style, whereas the Saw movies, as they went on, they started out having substance, but as they went on, it became style over substance.
Yeah.
Style being,
and it was
what else can we do to give the people what they came to see, which was really, really ridiculously gory nonsense. Which, gosh, the 2000s were a dark time for horror movies. Anyway, that's a different conversation for another day. So Will is gone.
And we end on that, of a blood-spattered Emma staring on him.
Cut to black. Just dang. So, and again, I thought this was very interesting that it happened right after the scene where Kieran was asking Emma if she still had feelings for him. Which, if he is the killer, you could just kind of see the wheels turn and go, like, yeah.
He has to go next.
Well, I was going to leave him be, but you have to go now, Will. I'm sorry.
Bed rest is not going to cut it. You got to leave.
Nope. And it was a really good setup too, with right before having Noah and Audrey have this conversation about, which she was out of this episode for the most part because she was making up a midterm, but having this conversation of how both Jake and Will's injuries could very well be red herrings, and I really liked that. And then the very next scene is Will's demise. And again, that's very clever because it's like, prior to that, we're like, ooh, is this a trap? Is this a trick? And then, yeah, sure enough, well, it's like, okay, well, one of our red herrings is gone. Does that leave Jake as our killer? Or is that another red herring? So
I'm still up for the podcaster, writing her own stories, creating her own stories.
I think that would be interesting. And again, why are they not releasing her podcast week to week with every episode?
Too many answers.
I would know, like that. It would offer a lot. I want it. I just want it. I think of the potential of that, and it would just be so entertaining. But the only other thing that I can think of to talk about for this episode, because I didn't get to see the preview. Neither of us got to see the preview for next week. We only have 3 episodes left, and again, chances are we're not going to get the answers that we want, which is frustrating. But the only other thing I really want to touch on in this episode is that I am, and I know I mentioned it a little earlier, I am really disappointed that the killer does in fact have a universal voice changer.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled that this essentially puts Audrey in the clear of Rachel's murder, but I'm still really kind of annoyed that the universal voice changer is a thing because that is so contrived. And in a series that looks like it's doing a really good job of putting in the clues and building suspense and actually surprising me by killing off a character like Will, I'm a little disappointed that of all things is like a contrivance. But at the same time, you know, Noah has an app for everything, or has a software there actually is one more thing to talk about. It was just a brief one-off mention thing. The professor said, teacher. He's not a professor because he doesn't teach.
Well, my brain went doctor, so that definitely wasn't it either.
But the gentleman that Brooke had been having an affair with, somehow Noah had ran his prints, and he didn't have any priors, and the malware had essentially been scrubbed from his computer. So if the teacher, call him the professor again, if the teacher is, because I keep thinking they're in college, not high school.
They look like it.
I know, right? But if the teacher is involved, he doesn't have a prior record, and he definitely knows what he's doing because he can eliminate malware. But for right now, it doesn't look like there's any trace of the malware. So we're back to square one as to whether or not the teacher can be trusted. Hello, kitty cat.
Who knows? Yep, we've got a cat over here.
But anyway,
That's about it.
Final thoughts just watching this one, because I very much enjoyed it.
I did. I really liked this. It was a bit of a departure from the rest of the series, given that it was very Saw and extremely gory, even for a series that gave us a heart in a box in the first episode. But I did enjoy it.
I did too. I enjoyed the twist. I enjoyed the fact that it's keeping me guessing, even though I get frustrated by it. I enjoyed the banter because there was a lot of talk about, you know, there was a lot of cabin in the woods dialogue in terms of like, really, we're splitting up? Said no person who ever survived a horror movie ever, you know, that sort of thing. And so I really liked the dialogue. Yeah, no, there was just a lot of really good stuff in this episode. And yeah, I know that there's other things I want to talk about, but now they're slipping my mind. Yeah. Do you have any predictions? Since, again, we didn't see the preview for next week.
And we got 2 weeks before we watch again.
Yeah. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to be in Japan next week, so we're probably going to double up on episodes again like we did last time.
I still think Dad's involved somehow.
Whether
he's super dead or he's either dead or the killer.
I kind of want to think that he's the killer. Or helping the killer in some way. Because he's, like, the killer is currently... Oh, that was one thing I wanted to bring up, was that all of this is being projected onto Emma for some reason and not Daisy. And I know that there is definitely a motif of you know, the sins of the father become the sins of the son or whatever, or your,
Because
your
kids
children
are
paying for your mistake.
malleable. He can fuck with Emma so much more easily than he can fuck with Daisy because Daisy has more life experience, more self-assurance. She's better at this.
Yeah, and again, a good way of getting to people is by getting to their children. You know, you go all Nightmare on Elm Street. You get your revenge on the parents by taking it out on their children. But, you know, that is a deliberate choice on the killer's part because he very much has the choice. He sent Daisy a heart in a box. He could very well have made this all about her, but he instead has chosen to make Emma the star for some reason. And I don't know if that's specifically to hurt Daisy or if because the killer, again, if there's more than one, if one of them is like,
or could be obsessed with her.
Yeah, this could be that Kieran wants her to himself. It could be any number of things. It could be, I mean, up until recently, Emma was running with people like Nina, and even though she's the nicer of, you know, the group of popular girls, she was complicit in a lot of messed up stuff, like uploading a video that went viral, quote unquote. So it's entirely possible that she upset somebody who is like, who again is tied to something in the past and is like, you know what, I'm going to take it out on you because you're just like your mother. So, I don't know. Any other thoughts?
There's a lot of being stuck in the past here.
Yeah, a lot of misogyny and a lot of stuck in the past because, you know, again, they keep calling her mother a whore. And that is disgusting because, you know, and we're just even assuming that she did sleep with Brandon, that doesn't make her, that doesn't make her a whore. It makes you a selfish jerk. Just putting on, anyway, that's a whole issue.
Yeah.
Go watch a couple of John Oliver videos to talk. Like, he actually did one on sex education. Go watch that one because it's awesome. But yeah, to talk a little bit about misogyny and just the way we're teaching things to the generation that comes after us and everything like that. So yeah, and again, 20 years ago, things were even worse.
Yeah.
So, any other thoughts? Because this...
No, you've asked me 3 times.
I know. All right, well, guys, thank you so much. We will be back in 2 weeks to talk about episodes 8 and 9 of this season. So, that is super exciting, and yeah, I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much, guys. We will see you all next time.